Compare and order rational numbers. If you are following along in your book, you will find us on page 271. So go ahead and turn to page 271. You could pause this video at any time. So if you need to pause this video, go ahead and pause it and start it back up when you need to start it. Set your notes up correctly. Okay, a couple of ideas here. We have this nice line right here. Put in your title, page number, okay. Essential question, you can always pause it. What happens when you add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions? Today we're just really going to talk about fractions. Okay, so that's very, very important, just the fractions. We're going to talk about vocabulary such as what's a rational number, what's a common denominator, what's a least common denominator. Okay, so let's get started. Page 271. Okay, so in your notes, I have like 3 circles here. And in our first circle, I have these whole numbers. And this is going to help us describe what everything is. In the bigger circle, I have integers. Notice that in that bigger circle, whole numbers are still part of it. Okay, and then in the bigger circle, I have rational numbers. Okay, rational numbers are those numbers that is a fraction or a portion of a number. So any decimal, any percent, any fraction. So think of that as rational numbers. So I just described to you basically what rational numbers are. So in other words, a whole number, you have 2, 5, 10. An integer, we added negative onto those. Okay, but integer is also going to be whole numbers too, positive and negative numbers. And then rational numbers, any of those numbers that are a percent or a decimal or a fraction. So if I go through my list here, 0.8, yeah, you probably guessed it, it's probably going to be a rational number. Okay, 2.2, continuing on forever, rational. -1 is integer. Whole number, 1. And 1 2/3, what do you think? Yeah, that's also going to be rational. So if you thought that that's what this was going to be, now you could have put these 0.8, 2.2 with a line over it, or 1 2/3, anywhere, as long as it fits within the rational numbers. The whole number of 1 was in whole numbers, and the -1 was in integers. If you have to pause, go ahead and pause. If you have to take notes the correct way, go ahead and do that. But I should see circles on your page. I should see whole numbers, integers, and rational numbers, or at least examples of those. Okay, so today's lesson is compare and order rational numbers. In other words, put them in order on a number line, or put them in order, or tell me which one is larger and which one is smaller. And sometimes that can kind of get tricky, especially when we add in negatives with decimals, or negatives with fractions, or negatives with percents. Okay, so the first question is fill in the blank with a less than, greater than, or equal to sign to make -1 5/6 blank is -1 1/6 a true statement. So you're either going to say -1 5/6 is greater, -1 5/6 is less than, or -1 5/6 is equal to. Well, you probably figured out that if you have 1/6 over here and you have 5/6 over there, that they're not equal. So we already figured out that, hey, they're not equal. So we can work on that. But which one's greater and which one's not? Now this is tricky because what you have is you have negative numbers. So sometimes they appear to be larger, but they're really not. So let me give you an example. Let's just think of this as regular numbers. Let's just talk about, say, 0. And then as I go out, let's say that's -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. Okay, so we go -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6. Well, just because the 6 appears to be larger, actually we're getting smaller. I'll just call it less than. And as you go to the right, it's more of a greater than. Okay, so with that information, let's go ahead and look over here. I have a graph already set up. Okay, and my 0 is over here. So let's just say my 0 is like right around here. Okay, so really what I'm looking at is I'm looking at a negative 1 1/6, and I'm looking at negative 5 1 5/6. Well, look at that. Negative 1 5/6, even though it's 5/6 versus 1/6, it's negative. Therefore, it is less than. Why is it less than? Well, it's farther to the left. If you go to the left, you got negative 1 2/6, negative 1 3/6, negative 1 4/6, negative 1 5/6. Very similar to what I did here, just this was more of integers, this is more of fractions. So if I was going to write this out, I would have to say that negative 1 5/6 is less than negative 1 1/6. Okay, so you'll have to work those out with the number line. What I want you to do next is I want you to go ahead and use these number line, use the number line to compare these two numbers, negative 5 5/9 and negative 5 1/9, and I want you to tell me, is negative 5 5/9 greater, less than, or equal to? Okay, welcome back. Well, there's lots of different ways that we can go ahead and compare and order rational numbers. That was one of the ways that we can order rational numbers. Another way is, again, we're still using less than, greater than, or equal to make sentences true. 7/12 and 8/18. Okay? One of the ways that we do that is the common denominator, or the least common denominator. Okay, so if I was going to make a common denominator out of these two numbers here, I have to take a look at, say, 7/12 and I look at 8/18. Now, first of all, common denominator. Denominator is the key word here. But you're going to be looking for the least common denominator. So I'll write it out. Least common denominator. That means that what number can both 12 and 18 go into, okay, without, that's the smallest. Okay, so the LCD of the denominators is 12 and 18. And so let's say what both of these can go into is 36. Well, how do I get 12 to 36? I can multiply it by 3. But you got to make sure you do it on both sides. So what do I get? I get a 21 over 36. Okay? So what you do is you start multiplying until you get your numbers. So another way to do this is to take, and you got like, say, 12, and so you start working your way out, and you say, okay, so I'm going to go 12, and then you're going to go, that's 12 times 1, and then 12 times 2 is 24, and then 12 times 3 is 36. And then I take my 18, and my 18 times 1 is 18. Then my 18 times 2, sorry, 18 times 2 is not 24, is 36. And all these are the same. So right away, I already know it's like, okay, that must be my lowest common denominator. Now you could keep on multiplying, and you might get another common denominator, but that would not be your least. So that's one way to get those. And then I said, okay, well, to get 12 to 36, that was 3. To get 18 to 36, that was multiplying it by 2. So So you got to multiply 2 to both numerator and denominator. Remember, we're not changing the fractions. So I get this 16 over 36. Now both of these are split up into 36ths now. So now I can compare them. So I look at both of the numbers. I look at, well, over here I got 21 36ths, and over here I got 16 36ths. Well, I'm sorry, but 21 is greater than 16, and 21 36ths is 7/12ths reduced. So that shows me that, hey, that is greater than 8/18. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let you try to figure these out using the LCD, common denominator. So use the LCD to figure these out, get those to the common denominator, and then figure out which one is greater than and which one is less than.